So when I'm preparing an illustration with a 3D base, I'm usually using Blender because it's free, so Onion Power. And it's pretty good software. I really like it. At least I've grown to like it with time. And I like to set up a couple of cameras, and I like to set up some. I'm usually doing this along designing because sometimes I'm just trying to look at the design from different perspectives. Like for example, more of front view, some perspective view, some upper angle or lower angle, more dramatic angle, and stuff like that. And later on, when I decide that, oh, I would like to create an illustration that's gonna be like a presentation illustration of the design, that also will help me test some things here. Because like I was mentioning before in the design breakdown part, for me, design and illustration doesn't necessarily always go well hand in hand. And what I mean by that is that what looks great as an illustration or like a concept art doesn't mean that it will immediately work well as a design and vice versa. So the great design would not necessarily translate very well into the great illustration, at least for me. And as I was saying before, all I'm gonna say and show here is just my thoughts about it. And I'm no design guru and I'm no illustration guru or not even a great artist. So having said that, what I usually do when I'm setting up the cameras, I'm looking for a couple of more dramatic angles, for a couple of more storytelling angles, and for a couple of very, very boring angles, just to have some spread and basically variety. When I have those set up, I do something like that. I go with Ctrl B and select camera view, and then go with render option in the viewport. So now I should have only visible what camera sees and nothing apart from camera sensor, which is pretty good because this allows me to focus mainly on the shot without any external noise that would take away from it. And then I just jump through different camera views and just look, oh, this looks kind of cool with this lighting, and maybe this goes kind of cool with this lighting. And I'm simultaneously changing lighting scenarios and moving some objects. As you can see here, I have some blocking objects that are casting shadows onto the facade. And sometimes I just even go with total ambient lighting scenario, sometimes with a couple of different lights, sometimes with different colors of light. And as you can see, this is like pretty much the happy accident phase, and whatever grabs my attention and captures the story that I've came up on the fly best, that was the one I've used for this illustration. And there's like a more dramatic version of it. And it's pretty much it in terms of creating a base render or a basic shot for illustration. Later on, I just render it on layers. The main layers that I use is like a basic render, so raw render with some denoising, the mist pass and the mask pass. Those are the only ones that I usually use. Sometimes I use the straight diffuse or shadow layer, but it's very, very, very uncommon for me to like use them on the daily basis. And with those renders, I can go both ways. I can immediately import them into Photoshop and start overpainting and trying to destroy this very sterile and CGI look, even though I'm nowadays using quite a lot of textures and procedural textures in Blender to make my renders look a little bit more worn out with some grain and grit to them, so they won't be this sterile as a render. And also I just give myself some time to create and some weathering on the models by sculpting, by destroying some of the edges, by adding some more maybe subdivision levels to the mesh and then trying to make it more clean and bevels and stuff like that. But it depends on how much time do I have. If I'm not going directly with renders into Photoshop, I sometimes, and I started doing this more often nowadays, I import the overall render and then maybe the mist pass or maybe only the diffuse pass into the free software that is called Photo Sketcher. And it's really, really cool app because it allows you to pretty much use different setups that will help to convert your base image into something that it's more stylized or more looking like something done in more traditional medium. It's a good at least an hour up to 2 hours head start with overpainting, because I can do the same stuff in Photoshop pretty much. But sometimes I'm just short on time. Sometimes I just like have some problems with my wrist, so I'm just cutting corners in terms of manual labor. And then when I import all the stuff to the Photoshop, I just start with overpainting. This is the basic render that I've used for this illustration to test the design and how it would work in terms of a more presentable piece. And as I was mentioning before, I usually start with either importing the raw renders into the Photoshop, but this is like highly detailed render. You can already tell that there's a lot of stuff happening. So probably I would need to spend at least an hour, maybe 2 hours with like mixer brush or some blending in, and maybe using some tools like filter, blur, where is it, blur? Surface blur on this piece to make it less sharp at places, and just to bring focus to the areas that I want to bring focus to and make it feel more painterly pretty much. Or I can just use an app that I've mentioned, Photo Sketcher, and this gives me this kind of results. So it destroys an image a little bit and hides some of the details and gives you already a more natural look to it, or maybe not natural, but more traditional look to it. And this is like the very first step for me. I can also go like one of my other illustrations with this very raw render and then just overpaint it by hand and add as I go more painterly look. And here I mainly use the mixer brush because it helps me to destroy all the sharp edges that are on the objects that are farther away from the camera that should be more like soft and blurred. Also, it allows me to selectively create some interplay of sharp versus blurred edge or lost and found edges, and diminish some of the details and blend textures so they are less harsh the farther away they are from the viewer and stuff like that. And I really like this, and I often use the trick that allows me to bring some more color variation into certain value ranges of the painting. And I do this by using gradient maps. So I set up a gradient map with blending option that is focused only on a certain value range. And I can play with its blending modes and with gradients that I can create, so they affect different areas of the value spectrum. And then I create another one, as you can see here, tick, 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 that is just slightly shifted in terms of when it's gonna be visible on the piece. It's just slightly toward the right. And this gives me like a very cool interplay of maybe complementary colors, maybe the similar colors just with different slight shifts of the hue and stuff like that, just to bring some more interest color-wise to like very mundane piece otherwise. And I almost always use this trick with my paintings when I'm doing like a final illustration, stuff like that. So if I'm using like, for example, Photo Sketcher, so this is like basic render, this is like the thing that I have from Photo Sketcher. And again, the thing that I was mentioning before about the design and illustration differences, this is where it comes to play and is highly visible to me at least. And what I mean by that is this place, let me grab something to put, okay, this place on the initial render, in the initial design, was pretty much just a repetition, simple rhythm. You know, if we're gonna call the rhythms, it's gonna be A, B, A, B, A, B, A, and stuff like that. So there was no variation, was very mundane. It worked for the design and what I wanted to show through the design. But for the illustration, this is a little bit too boring. And also, like, I have this place. I can maybe mask it with using some like darker colors, so making it go away in the shadows and stuff like that. But then I have like only this piece, and it brings total attention of the viewer to this one place, and I didn't want that because I thought that this place that I'm trying to portray here, the story here is that nobody cares about the human beings that are lured into this weird dreamlike mansion or palazzo in its garden. Human beings basically are like a pots, walking pots or hosts for the seeds and plants that are grown in this place. The mistresses and masters of this place basically don't care about human beings, and they don't show any emotions, they don't have any empathy. They can use emotions to lure those poor humans in, but they don't truly care about them. So there is no empathy. And the whole area should feel indifferent to the human beings in it. And to achieve this, I wanted to add another focal point that will be a little bit competitive or competing with this one, so it will be taking away your attention from this place. So in order to create additional competing focal point, I added this more elaborate staircase with some lights that are framing the railing of the staircase, and I've got rid of one of the balconies. And this allowed me to create a certain sense of movement throughout the piece for the eye. This helped me to create, at least in my mind, certain possibilities of eye movement throughout the piece. So if the viewer gonna look at it, they're gonna probably first and foremost notice the area of highest contrast, or they're gonna be led to this area by the lighting that is a gradient and with the arising level of detail, and then the interplay of complementary colors. And then gonna be led here and visually gonna see a staircase gonna want to follow it, and they're gonna see this framed by two lighting place, which is pretty much just a long black rectangle, which is oriented vertically. So this is gonna help bring eye up, and then the cycle gonna continue. It's still gonna be confined to more of a center of the piece, but even with that, people will be able to maybe go a little bit here to see stuff, maybe this, but this will be like a third and fourth read, hopefully. At least this is how I'm thinking about this when I'm thinking about the compositions of my illustrations. And also this helps me achieve the idea of that there are two competing focal points. So this stops being so very, very, very important. What I mean by that, and I'm trying to like find a good balance here between those two. And this is again when I started introducing a new idea. This is also a raw render, and I've put it into the photo sketcher and run it through the photo sketcher app and then imported it back to the Photoshop. And then I started playing with colors and diminishing some details and overpainting stuff very, very subtly just to get the right feeling and atmosphere and mood. And when I was happy with the color scheme and or color palette and general aesthetics of the piece and the composition and value structure, I started working on details. And I also added as a thing that I thought at least that it's gonna be kind of cool. So I've introduced some additional lighting that are perceived through the change of hue, because the color of lighting is hinted here. And here, and here, and here is pretty much read by the eye as the same color just behind the glass and just in the more and more and more dark environment. And I've created it at an angle, so it creates like a gradient that rises towards this place, so one of the highest contrast moments in the piece. And then it helps you to go here to the warmer place and see the silhouette or the shadow of some kind of a creature, one of the mistresses of this garden in this example. Then see the tormented human beings that are trying to run away from them and something weird is happening to them. And then you can see like those statues that are not even looking at them. And everything is just so indifferent to the torment of those human beings that are just a tiny speck in this huge place. And then your eye will probably go here again. So I'm using all those compositional tools to create a certain movement throughout the piece and create some kind of a story. And also through exploring this story, I've started changing the initial design by introducing maybe some external staircases, because initially I thought that maybe all of the communication that is done vertically would be done inside of the building. So all the staircases would be internal. So this illustration pretty much informed my design further and allowed me to create something less boring and less repetitive. So now I don't only have like the rhythm that I was mentioning before, like B, A, B. Now I have C, then I have again B, A, B, A. So this is a little bit more interesting and probably would work better as a design also. And still it serves certain purpose, so it's not meaningless or it's not random or not a happy accident. And it also allows some new gameplay mechanics if this was like a piece for a game, possibly. So it could inform the level design and maybe like player interactivity with the environment. The final thing that was kind of a problem for me in this piece is that, as you can see here, this silhouette or cast shadow on the wall was a little bit too strong. It was taking too much attention, for me at least. And also, I know that the idea of this cast shadow is quirky. It's like a 1920s and 30s gothic horror trope. It is kind of funny and quirky, and I liked it. And it's like, oh, what is happening here? Oh, something is casting a shadow. Oh, something is lurking in the darkness. What it is? A Dracula. Or I don't know. Or a count from Muppets, whatever. One shadow. One shadow. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4 victims. 4 victims. 4 slaves. YouTube gonna ban me for that. Anyway, so I've just tried to play with the value structure of this one place in the piece and make it hide a little bit and blend better, but still gonna be noticeable. And that's it. Pretty much in terms of how I thought about this illustration and how this helped me to bring some new ideas to the overall design. So there's no magic to it. It's just, using Photoshop, Blender, and having some ideas and basic knowledge of composition and what I want to do. And as I was mentioning before, I really like the story-driven design and illustrations. So I always try to use everything I have in my toolset to tell a story. It can be boring story, it can be stupid story. I don't say that I'm great at it. I'm just saying that I try to do it and that this helps me to create pieces that, at least for me, are a little bit more interesting. This is the first time I've ever recorded such a thing. And I don't know if I'm gonna do this in the future. Maybe you've learned something. Maybe you've taken away some interesting pointers from here. Maybe you decided that, oh, that was extremely boring, and you just want to sue me for wasting like almost more than an hour of your life. That's fine too. And that's pretty much it. So thanks for watching. And I hope that maybe at least one person that managed to watch through all of this long and badly edited rambling of mine could learn something, or maybe found it interesting, or maybe it was inspiring for them or for this one person. Probably gonna be only one person. It's probably gonna be my mom or something like that. Something like that. I just said something like that about my mom. Oh god, I need to stop. So have a nice day. Thank you very much and bye.